What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Savage Patriots. It is Monday, the 17th, and we are here to discuss something that's going to affect our kids, one, but
World
two is
War
going to affect
Three.
the way America is now functioning. Well, I know it's on this last leg because of this potato, but this is going to be saying some more stuff about what they're trying to tell you without telling you. Recently, the House passed a automatic registration bill for young men and women for the draft, the military, because they did not meet quota in this last
Right.
few years. I wonder why, because ain't nobody want to go to a cross-dressing military. Maybe Mrs. Doubtfire should not
Hmm.
be put into war. I don't know. Maybe what do
Right.
you guys think about? Let's start with there. Let's start with the draft idea. I think that includes your kid, doesn't it, bro? Wouldn't it?
He's frozen.
Mine?
Yeah, doesn't the draft? Wouldn't this draft bill include your kid?
Who, my kid?
Mm-hmm. I think it does. Automatically registers anyone young men under a certain age, isn't it?
That's what I thought.
Yeah, it's gonna be all
18 to 26.
yeah, 18 to 26, all of them.
So your kid's right in there. Your kid is right in there like swimwear. So is mine. In fact, all of my boys and my daughter would be registered on this particular bill. And I'm glad that my
Hmm.
daughter will be leaving the United States so she can't get drafted. She's
There you
gonna go.
go.
She's gonna go
Well,
become
you
a
guys got
citizen
me
of
now.
Japan. Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys got me now. So,
Yep, yep.
my kid doesn't qualify because he has medical issues.
Oh, they'll override that.
So, nah,
They'll
Your
track
kid,
Yeah, I mean, look what
we looked
your kids are
into it.
no. Your kid's a conservative, man.
We
Your kid is
looked
a
in.
conservative.
look what they
He is, but we
Really?
looked into it, and they can't override because of the type of treatment he's getting, so they can't.
Well, we said they can't do a lot of things, but they do it
That's
anyway.
good.
So
Because
one of the
he ain't fighting no World War III. I'll go in his place. I'll play tribute.
yeah, you go again. Yeah, the one of the
Man.
things that they did in Ukraine was that they actually were forcing even people with medical issues into service. There was an entire video of them like abusing a kid with Down syndrome.
I saw that one.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring up the article for the House bill here,
I got
unless you have the actual House bill.
no, I've got the executive summary.
Okay,
Okay.
well, let's do this one here real quick. The House's version of the National Defense Authorization Act, which would authorize $895 billion in military spending, passed by a vote of 270 to 199. It's unlikely to be picked up by the Democrat-controlled Senate because numerous amendments regarding abortion, diversity efforts, and transgender medical treatment.
Yeah.
Anyway, the selective service provision, though, is part of an enduring bipartisan effort to keep the framework of the military conscription in place, even though the draft ended in 1975. Automatic registration would place the coming of age tradition that all 18-year-old male U.S. citizens experience when they get a card in the mail from Uncle Sam informing them that they're required, under threat of criminal penalties, to register for selective service. Supporters of the legislation framed it as more efficient and cost-effective method.
It's funny to me that they add in the whole point of transgender medical treatments because, like, okay, I just want to point this out as like a former military guy. Having any sort of major surgery makes you non-deployable. Hell, even people with teeth and dental issues are non-deployable. I mean, Michael could tell you that every single time, as being a staff NCO, he's had to deal with all of these sort of medical issues where they have to make up. You have to get everybody seen, and they have to be a certain level in order to get deployed. And if they can't be deployed because of medical reasons, then it puts the actual force lower for deployments, right? So if you have a person who has a medical treatment where it makes a hole inside of them, and it's not a real hole, it's one that has to be opened constantly and repeatedly,
You can't serve.
you can't serve. You're non-deployable. You're literally non-deployable. You're useless as a deployable individual. Like this is the same thing with like these women that'll get in and they'll constantly get pregnant in service, so they never actually have to deploy. So they get all the benefits, but they don't actually have to do anything.
I'm gonna try that.
And there's
Get
plenty
pregnant?
of women that have gotten in trouble
Yeah.
for that because they got caught actually saying that's what they were doing, but they can't actually do anything about it if they just happen to keep getting pregnant. Just happen to happen that way.
So you think this is going to cause a influx of people going into the military, or is it just this is my thought that what they're trying to do? I think they're doing this conscription thing because they know what they're planning in terms of war.
Yeah.
And they realize that people are not fighting for America like they used to, but they have to fulfill the body count. They'll end up being fodder. Because you're grafting people in there that have no desire to fight, but you force them to, and they don't have the same mental resolve as they did back in World War I and II. They're gonna just go over there to be bodies. They're not gonna be worth anything over there. So this is a breakdown of the bill.
Yeah, this is the executive summary, but I wanted to point out the interesting bit of information here is that this is last year's was $888 billion. This year, it's $923 billion. And I want people to have a grasp and understanding of what this actually means. This is closer to $1 trillion than it is $1 billion, like $1 billion. We are only like what, 80? Not even that. It's like 70, 78, 77 billion dollars away from being $1 trillion. Next year, it will be $1 trillion. Without a doubt. Next year, the NDA is going to be $1 trillion. Right. And more stuff is going to the Department of Defense, but this is also split up between the Department of Entry. The reason why it's the DOE is because that's where all the nukes are handled is DOE. DOE handles the nukes, by the way, if you didn't know that. That's what that is.
So this is
Oh, and then defense related activities outside of the NDA jurisdiction. It's $11 billion. I wonder what that goes to.
Let's call that spying.
This goes with dark money.
Let's call that
Yes.
spying, and we'll put that towards Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and all the other platforms where they can monitor what you're doing.
Right.
They have now. We're going somewhere with all this because we have to lay some framework for you, right? If they're telling you that you are now conscripted, just like they did back in the 60s, 70s, stuff like that. The biggest problem you'll have here is that you only start that on when you have something that you think is coming. Now, what's coming is not what most people may think is coming. What we believe is coming is a fight with Ukraine and Russia. Recently,
There you go for Europe.
Vladimir Putin came to the table with a peace treaty, and it was rejected by the UN.
These principles are quite straightforward. Ukraine must fully withdraw its troops from the Donetsk and Lugansk People's Republic, from the Kherson and Zaporozhye regions. And let me emphasize that I'm talking about the entire territories of these regions within their administrative borders as they existed under Ukraine. As soon as Kyiv says that it's ready and starts the withdrawal of its troops, and once they say that they are no longer willing to join NATO, just the same moment, immediately, we will stop the fire and launch talks. We will do this immediately. Let me repeat this. At the same time, we guarantee that Ukraine will be able to withdraw its troops safely. These decisions on the withdrawal of troops and then non-aligned status and the dialogue with Russia, which will define Ukraine's future, we believe that these decisions must be taken by Kyiv independently, guided by the genuine interests, national interests of the Ukrainian people, without getting instructions from the West. We can doubt that this is possible.
Now, that's valuable. That last piece he said,
Yep.
without intervention from the West. This has always been the U.S. problem. This has always been Britain's problem. We go put our nose in things that do not concern us.
Mhm.
And then
Yeah.
we say we don't interfere in other people's business. We do. That's all we seem to do, is go deal in other people's problems, cause more problems, and then at the end of it, we have to stay in order to fix the problem we caused, causing
That we
even more
created.
problems because now we have fighting to go do with our military who should not have been there in the
In the
first place.
place.
Right. So, like, quick background on
Yeah.
that. I know we've covered it before, but like this whole started because of the Gazprom monopoly in the
Mhm.
pipeline. Right. This is all about energy and gas, is getting cheap energy to Europe. That's what this entire war has ever been about. That's basically what the entire Middle East was about, was cheap gas to Europe. That's really what it is about. So they'll say it's like NATO expansion, all this, but NATO expansion was only to further the goal of getting cheap gas into Europe. This is what it's always been about. So the only people that were aggressing on somebody's territory was NATO and the West for their own security measures and means. So in the NDA, they also bring up Europe. What they're doing for Europe is it authorizes another 2 years of assistance to Ukraine. 2 more years. Requires the DoD to report efforts, identify, disseminate,
Yeah.
and implement lessons learned from the Ukraine war.
And
Go
why
ahead,
would
sorry.
why would Zelensky want peace if he's getting, like Marlon and I was talking backstage, gets 10 years of free money? Why would he want it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then for the UN and NATO to come in and tell him to disagree with it, pretty much tell him you will disagree with it. He's going to take the money. Guess who else is going to get some of that money?
Us.
It's all just funneling back
Or
around.
us.
It's all dollars, man.
Right.
It's all about dollars.
And guess who's going to be responsible for building Ukraine?
Us.
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 And
Right.
guess what's
Gonna
not
have a
going to
base
happen?
there.
And guess what's not going to happen? That building of Ukraine. It'll end up being
Mhm.
Afghanistan 2.0.
But here's the thing: is they've
Yeah.
already killed all their young men. Who are they building it for?
Yeah.
To win it.
It's like you already decimated the entire younger population of men in Ukraine. Like they are forcing 45-year-old men and above to fight now. Who are you leaving it towards? Like you're saying we're gonna go. Basically, what they keep pushing for is total war. Because like if you're not willing to talk with them, you've already lost, dude. You lost like 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
We were just keeping you on life support. Like getting away without your entire nation taken over is pretty good at this point.
Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Can
Mhm.
Ukraine win this war against Russia if there is a war? No.
No.
First of all, I don't care how many armaments you get from the United States or from NATO or from anyone else. You do not possess the prowess. You don't possess the offensive might. You don't possess enough to fight Russia and win. There are very few countries on this earth right now that can go toe to toe with Russia. And we're talking about the big dogs like China and us.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We are going to struggle against a place like Russia. The only hope we have is to try and get everyone else on our side and try and get them to fight, which is what they've successfully done because everybody is about the global agenda except for Putin.
Mhm.
And so I can't blame them for that. I really can't.
I mean,
these are the regions.
Yeah, these are the reasons he's talking about. But the biggest thing I wanted to point out is that with this map is like this is February 2022 before the invasion, right? They had Crimea. The whole thing about Russia's advancement is all about this right here. And what do you know why that is? I mean,
No, go ahead.
Okay, it's the warm water port. Russia only has one warm water port. Guess where that is? In Crimea. The only thing they have access to a warm water area is right here. The only thing that attaches Crimea to Russia is right here, and it's a small little bridge, which they already blew up, by the way. So this whole war has always been about getting these regions right here, this land bridge to Crimea. That's what Russia's goals were. The US and NATO's goal was to disrupt Russia's monopoly to gas to Europe. Russia's goal was to make sure they were able to maintain a warm water port that leads to the Mediterranean. That's their goal. So you have two very different goals in what they want. And so like the West keeps saying, we want a just peace agreement with Russia. But they've already achieved their wartime goals. They never wanted all of Ukraine in the first place. All they wanted was this, and they got it. They got exactly what they wanted. They've already won their strategic ends at this point.
What I don't get is how America gets to tell anybody what they get to fight for when we go to fight for crap that doesn't belong and benefit the American people all the time.
Yeah.
Like the military goes to war for stuff that will never, ever, ever, ever come back to help American people. At
That's
least
right.
within the last 5-10 years. And you want us to back you for some reason. It's not that we don't back the military industrial complex at all. I think they're one of the most genocidal people on the face of the earth, and they have caused more harm to American life than they have aided it. The last time the military helped was the Civil War. That was it.
Right.
That was it. That was the last time we had a war where it mattered to the civilians in America. That was it.
Sure.
And people going,
and
well,
if you
what
look at
about
the
the
global,
Alamo? You know, go ahead.
if you look at the global economy right now, everything happened with the petrodollar. Again, everything ties back to money, resources. So the powers to be know that something's going on with the dollar, which was the world currency at one point. The dollar's crumbling. We all know that. So in order to put money back in the pocket of these big bankers that are part of the military industrial complex, they need a conflict, and they need a big one. They need a huge one. So if they can get all their force behind them, NATO, and a lot of the countries that are part of BRICS aren't part of NATO or don't want to have nothing to do with NATO, they back Russia. If they get all these other countries to take out Russia, they get their allies, Russia's allies to join, they can demolish BRICS, and then they could create whatever currency that they want to use. All of it is resources. Has nothing to do with the Ukrainian people, has nothing to do with anyone but money and resources, and they know this.
So we have the same video ready, Corey, ready to go.
Oh, okay.
That's funny.
Leaders from 101 countries and organizations wrapped up 2 days of discussion on ending Russia's war in Ukraine with a show of unity against Russian aggression. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky called for a diplomatic solution to end the war.
We are here today for the sake of diplomacy, and Ukraine has...
The problem is you don't want diplomacy. You were offered diplomacy. You didn't want diplomacy.
Yeah.
You guys know that you want war. Just admit it.
Has always believed in the power of diplomacy. War is not our choice. It's Putin's choice. At the peace summit today, we will do everything we can to start moving towards real peace.
Russia was not invited, but just before the summit, President Vladimir Putin demanded that Ukraine withdraw from territory captured by Russia and abandon its goal of joining NATO. US and other representatives at the summit saw this as an ultimatum, saying Russia has no intention of fostering peace or real negotiations.
I like the fact that they have this meeting about somebody and don't invite that somebody to the meeting.
I know, right?
That's kind of odd. That's how you fire
I was
somebody.
going to say that.
It's like,
you know, when it comes to peace agreements, like if Marlon and I had a disagreement, right, and we wanted to fight, we wouldn't have our whole entire families involved having talks about the fight that's going on between Marlon and I. Marlon and I would sit down in a room, talk it out, talk about what we agree on, and that's how you end conflicts. Conflicts have ended like that for many centuries. Why is this one? You have all these different countries involved discussing the fate of a country, for one, that is not there. And then you have this other leader surrounded by all these warmongers, and they're all against this one guy. Why not let's just get those two in a room and discuss it and let them come up with the agreement?
Right.
yeah.
He is not calling for negotiations. He is calling for surrender. America stands with Ukraine, not out of charity, but because it is in our strategic interest. We stand with delegations from more than 90 nations who also have a strategic interest in a just peace in Ukraine.
I'm glad you said the quiet part out loud.
Right.
What strategic interest do we have?
Thank you.
there?
Cheap gas into Europe. I
There
just
you
told
go.
you what it was.
And
Yeah.
since when?
But
Yeah,
but
since
since
when?
the early 2000s.
You know.
I mean, cheap gas in Europe, sure, but that has nothing to do with. I mean, am I so cheap gas in Europe? But I'm going to be the one paying $4.50 a gallon.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. Just
Well,
wanted to know
okay,
that.
look, when they say strategic to the United States, they don't mean strategic to the United States people. They mean strategic to the United States industrial complex for kickbacks, money, oil, and,
The
and
global
influence
elites, yeah.
and everything else, and ores and all that. They have. This is not about securing a future for the American people. This is about securing a future for the American political place. Okay, this has nothing to do with us, because there's no one that here is longing to go to Ukraine or needs passport to Ukraine to enjoy the wonderful state of Ukraine. No one cares about Ukraine. Nobody, like literally nobody's thinking, I'm going to go to Ukraine to party. It's the trash place. It's run by trash individuals. If it gets swallowed tomorrow by the sea, no one's going to care. Literally no one.
Hey, you better watch what you say, because Vladimir, whatever his name is, Zelensky, will put you on that list.
That cross-dressing little faggot can't do nothing to nobody.
You know, you got a list of Americans on
for educational purposes.
Man, come on. That little dirty cross-dressing snake is just like the half-dead, brain-dead potato in chief we have, and that's that whore right next to him that lived her whole life on her knees, Camel Toe Harris. All of them the same. They're all about perversion. They're all about taking rights away from both the Ukrainian people, the Russians, and the United States.
For educational purposes, YouTube. For educational purposes.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's for Jay, I'm gonna give him a little school knowledge here. Is the reason why they want cheap gas into Europe is the fact that they need an offset for the rise of China, right?
Mm-hmm.
Their economy becoming more beefy and hardy is a direct threat to the petrodollar, right? So they need some sort of offset, which is to boost the economy of Europe through cheap gas, which allows for more industrialized things to happen, more things in Europe happening, right? So cheap gas means more things can get made, is what it really comes down to. So cheap energy makes better things,
right?
And energy is more expensive, it becomes worse.
And I understand that, but I mean, but that has nothing to do with me.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. But it has everything to do with the global hegemony, the liberal economic order. It has everything to do with that, right? But people are making China out to be this giant tiger, but it's a paper tiger, right? If you actually see any reporting coming out of China and their economy, it is tanking. They literally have tofu buildings. And I don't mean that in like the literal sense, but you grab a piece of sheetrock or anything in there and it just crumbles in your hands. They have so many collapsing of buildings because of the infrastructure was built so hastily and corruptly that they can't even sustain themselves. China is not a threat. Economically, at least. I mean, militarily, probably, but economically, no.
Well, they have all our stuff anyway.
Everything.
They have all our stuff anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
China also did not attend the summit. Michael Carpenter, Senior Director for Europe at the National Security Council, says its absence reflects Beijing's support for Russia in the war, which he says has included providing Russia with defense technology and...
Hold on. You're gauging the fact that China didn't show up by your uninviting Russia?
Yeah.
Let me get it. So you spent your whole time for those last 2-3 years denouncing China. They decide to side with Russia. You don't invite Russia to a treaty place that is supposed to be dealing with peace that you want with Russia. And then when the one person that sides with Russia doesn't show up, you think this is an emphasis on... No, they're doing exactly what you hope they do, is not show up because you didn't want them there.
Yep.
These people, like, it's how difficult is this for people to see? I'm not going to go where I'm not wanted. Why would I go to that meeting? That makes no sense.
This whole thing, man, if it happens, which it might, you know, it's kind of a 50-50 chance, more like a 60-40 chance that this huge war that they want is going to happen. At the end of the day, we all know what they're trying to rein in. They're trying to rein in the one world government. We have to think like that. So if they have a world war, you get the one world leader in here that calls for peace, whoever that person is. He's probably already here. He calls for peace. He gets peace in the whole world. The whole world is kumbaya now. And they get what they want. They get the one world leader who brought peace to the world. This is a lot deeper than a lot of things. You know, they only show us the surface, but there's some rabbit holes to go in.
Can anybody tell me why Kamala is standing alone with this guy?
That's not Kamala.
We're talking about components like nitrocellulose, microprocessors, optics, other things that are directly used for Russian weapons. that are not just being used in Ukraine, but for our European partners. It's important to understand that pose a long-term threat to European security.
Some African leaders also were present, highlighting the magnitude of the war in Ukraine, a leading producer of grain for the world. Speaking at the end of the meeting, Ghana president says the consequences of Russia's aggression extended far beyond Europe.
In many ways, Africa has been the greatest victim of the conflicts. Consideration is given to the disruption of global trade, supply chains, lines, and the blockade of the Black Sea have had devastating impacts on our economies and our standards of living. High inflation, skyrocketing prices of foodstuffs.
Most of the participants in Switzerland signed the final document of the summit. However, some, including South Africa, Brazil, India, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, abstained. Ukrainian representatives announced the start of preparations for the next summit, which they aim to organize before the U.S. presidential elections. Representatives of some of the nations said they hope to see Russia at the negotiating table then. The summit,
but
we have
not
to
now.
invite him first.
Then, but not now.
Yeah. Later,
Okay.
later this year, no big deal. Just
And,
sometime.
you know, just watching that video, you saw all those suits up there, right? Those people are the ones that decide what goes on in the world, whether we're fighting here or we're fighting there. We're dropping bombs over here, we're dropping bombs over there. Those people. And all of them are warmongers who are tied to the military-industrial complex. They want war, and they don't care who dies, to get it. They don't care.
Yeah,
it's all about the end state. It's the end game.
And he's right. And the U.S. military is the armed police force of the global economic order. That's what it's always been. Always has been since Kennedy got assassinated, and probably before then when it started coming up after Eisenhower left office, right? He warned us. He warned us this was coming. He told us it was coming. And nobody listened.
You did realize they brought 2 token African countries to the meeting, and they didn't invite the ones that do side with Russia. You realize that?
Yeah.
They didn't bring Uganda or none of them. Those people. Look, it's pretty obvious. Pretty obvious. And even the African that was there wasn't even talking about the impact that Ukraine has on anything other than the fact that he's concerned about what it would mean and spill over to the African country that he's a part of.
Well, it does affect them in a way that Ukraine has the biggest export of grains to Africa, right? Because apparently Africa, with its abundant natural resources, hasn't figured out how to keep food in their own country.
No, they do. They know how to. They figured it out through America. Yeah. None of it stays there because of treaties made under the first Bush. All of that is now being signed over to China. They're not going to mention that.
That's right.
All the ore, all the grain, all the natural produce that happens in Africa from about, I would say, minimum plus 40 of the countries are going straight into other countries' coffers, which is why Africa, on a large scale, is impoverished. And they're not impoverished because of lack. They're impoverished because of corruption at the head.
Right.
They're impoverished because of what America did in treaties with the original Chinese government to create treaties to go in and take ore. Why do you think the Caribbean is so depleted? China and the U.S. made treaties over somebody else's country without their input, kind of like they're trying to do to Russia now. Yeah, that's what they do. They pull out the middleman, and the place that they want silence, they shut them up, and then they move along. It's what they do.
But that's how you keep Africa subservient, right?
Yeah, exactly. How they shut up Afghanistan too.
Yeah, because like if you have to import your foodstuffs, then you're not a country.
No.
Like period. In fact, like if you have to import more things than you export, you're not a country. You're a vassal state of somebody.
You're a pass-through.
Yeah, like you're not a country because if you cannot make your own things and you can't even feed your own people, you're not a country. Just period.
Exactly.
Let's hear what the cross-dresser has to say.
Yeah, here's some more of him going around saying stuff.
It is an ultimatum. These messages are not different from all the past ultimatums. Realistically, what we are witnessing is a resurgence of Nazism. His messages are the same as the ones Hitler made less than 100 years ago. No, this is a lie, a historic lie.
So
Did
I
he
want
just
to.
say with a straight face? Did he say Nazism?
That's
Yeah,
what I
it's a
was
resurgence of Nazism. Yeah. That's what he
Okay.
said.
Okay. So what? Hold on. What patches were his guys wearing in Ukraine?
Thank
Yeah.
you, brown
Weren't
shirts.
they wearing
Yes.
Nazi?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I was
Literal
just making
Nazis
sure,
in
yeah.
Ukraine. Yeah.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
literal Nazis in Ukraine. Okay.
Yeah, the descendants of
cross
Nazis who worked with the Nazis during World War II. Yeah, just those guys. No big deal.
No
But
big
it's
deal at all.
funny to me because like here's the other thing that people tend to overskip. The only reason that Hitler came to power was because of Western interference that caused the issue with Germany in the first place. Right. So like Germany wasn't really at fault for World War I. They just pinned it all on Germany and then said you got to pay everybody back, even though everybody got involved in it. They just took that one friend and goes, hey, you know, you're responsible for dinner tonight, right? And then this guy's already broke to begin with, and they took all of his money to pay for the dinner. And then he's like, well, now I know what I'm supposed to do. Well, you got to figure it out. You got to pay us back some more money later. And that's what happened. And that's what happened to
And
Germany.
this is the end goal. Okay, you create the conflict by proxy, which is what they did in order to get things going. Then you participate in the war financially, but don't say that you have any real thing going on over there. Then you make sure that the war continues by not accepting any peace treaties. When you don't accept the peace treaty, you have then reason to drop more things on the country that you're backing, in this case being Ukraine, and support them even heavier, and then get the world to support them. And you put boots on the ground while telling the American people that you have no boots on the ground. And when there's a claim that says, oh, boots are on the ground in Ukraine, Biden is bringing us closer to World War III, what do? You put out the propaganda that says, no, the military is just inspecting weaponry delivered in Ukraine.
Right.
We're not really there to fight. We're there to inspect. It's a much bigger don't worry about what you're seeing. We're not going to fight. We're just there to monitor.
So basically what they're saying is our involvement is benign.
But
right. Even though we were the ones to give Ukraine permission to fire HIMARS into Russia, we are not involved with the war.
Yeah.
We're just giving intelligence and telling them, directing them certain operations and how to fight. No big deal. We're not involved. We're not involved.
And yet there goes my $35,000 microchip source for my $1.5 million rocket paid by my tax dollars.
No.
Fantastic. Yeah. But we're just involved benignly, guys.
Think about this, okay? This is how I know for a fact their intent and goal is indeed to kick off WW3. We were on a live the other day on TikTok talking about the CHIPS Act. Okay. This is how America is prepping their side. You know that the military ain't going to be much help. You set up the conscription thing. The military's might is not as strong when it comes to personnel, human-wise. You need to be able to create or craft weaponry that you need less manpower for. The CHIPS Act is going to start incorporating a whole lot of outside sources and materials to make weaponry perfect, all remote control, because that's what they're pushing, the new AI thing. Now they can start wars without even, like they wanted to do, like they did in Cuba, where they were going to have these false missiles fired from places you don't know. This is what they were planning to do in Cuba, by the way. They'll do the exact same thing in Ukraine and Russia. All of a sudden, you're going to start seeing attacks being done in Russia, but they won't know where it's coming from. And then you're going to later find out that we had to implement certain ones of our weapons into Ukraine in order to help Ukraine. But since we're there helping them figure out the weaponry, we might as well, since Russia is such a big threat, we might as well participate and side with Russia. And I think it's good that the UN should join into, and this way we can shut them down by going into Russia as a conglomeration. And what's going to end up happening is that Russia is going to retaliate. And you're going to kick off WW3 because China's going to side with Russia. Now, the one wild card people aren't taking into consideration is North Korea. They're totally forgetting North Korea even has dogs in this fight. And their dog in the fight isn't material. It isn't financial. It's influential. And you got a crazy man with nukes. So if you want to,
and here's what I think what happened with North Korea. like you said, Marlon, they would fire off some missiles from somewhere. Something will happen. Same thing I think will happen between the North and the South. I think they know that North Korea, there's a chance that North Korea is sleeping, and there's a possibility that North Korea would join Russia's side. So how do we contain North Korea? We get some missiles that come from somewhere in South. North Korea starts fighting the South, and they contain that fight right there on that peninsula while they handle everything else over here. Same thing with Japan. Same thing. All these little proxy, all these little wars going on. Something will happen between those countries to contain them. So the UN, NATO, and America focus on Russia. They don't want North Korea or China involved.
The issue with keep them out of it. The issue with North Korea and South Korea is the fact that the largest majority of U.S. personnel outside of the United States is in Seoul, Korea. Mm-hmm. Right? So you have a very large contingency of military operations in South Korea, which if it's attacked during that time, we cannot therefore use any of that U.S. personnel anywhere else in any theater, period. So you would have that one. Then you would have the one in Taiwan with China doing a invasion there onto the island, right? And then you would also have to worry about the issue of Ukraine and Russia into Europe. So the U.S. cannot be split into 3 different theaters at the exact same time. It's not going to happen. Like, we won't have the personnel or the people to be able to pull that off.
So here's the question. Do you think they care about the people or personnel to pull it off other than just having the wars go on? Because here's what I keep thinking is going to eventually be the linchpin. I don't think they care about the amount of bodies they lose in this.
No.
This is not about
This is about
body
resetting.
count. Yeah.
This is about the reset, right? You got to really think about it like that. This is the reset.
Let me go even deeper with that. Do they even care about the collateral damage between some of these allied nations like South Korea and Japan becoming glass, and then you have Taiwan becoming glass, all for the sake of So I mean, to even go so far as the military personnel look at it, what about the nations that they're deployed in? Like South Korea is going to be glass.
Yeah, well, they're about the population anyway, right?
50,000 U.S. personnel. Right in the beginning of the offensive in Seoul.
And that's what I was going to talk about, Marlon. And before you said it, I was going to bring up the depopulation. This isn't something new. They've been talking about the depopulation of the world. And there's even something floating around out there where they have the breakdowns of each country, what they want to bring the population down to. So as Jay was saying, they don't care about the collateral damage because at the end of the day, they have a depopulation agenda. And if we can knock the populations down in these certain areas, America is like, I forget what the percentage was in America, but all these other countries are pretty high in the percentage they want to knock out. They get what they want. It all leads to the one world government. It all leads to the new world order. It all leads to all that resources, money, and control. Has nothing to do with the people.
So look at this. The reason I said that China is not an economic threat, but a military threat, is the fact that they have too many men. Simple as that. They have too many men. They have too many young men that have no hope of ever getting married or starting families, right? So you have a bunch of listless young men who can cause trouble. And what do you do when you have too many young men? You send them off the war. Mm-hmm. You get them out of your country. So either they're going to colonialize with their young men or they're going to kill them all. That's one of the two. And the best way to do that is to send them to war. Mm-hmm. And there's 2 places they can send them to. One is India, which India needs to have a population reduction anyway, according to them. And then Taiwan would be the secondary one. So India is on board with the BRICS at the moment, but they still have a testy alliance with China. They've never really gotten along. India's and China is going to be the biggest issues in that region. So that's kind of the big issue. But then also with Russia is you have to look at it like this, is like they keep pushing Russia to total war, because that's what it only leads down to. Is bringing it back to Ukraine, is that if they push Russia so far that it's either you give up what you want or else, then Russia's going to choose the or else.
Yeah,
that's period. Either give them what they want, or you're just going to have to wipe Russia out. There's no other way around it.
Well, they're not going to wipe Russia out. Not without some massive, massive loss. Now, if you tell me that they have already calculated for that loss, I can believe that. I can 100% believe that all the countries involved have already taken in, like you say, Coy, with the collateral damage, they've taken into consideration all the losses that they have no problem taking on.
Right.
Even if that means the removal of countries, of entire cities, city blocks, important diplomats, they don't care as long as the end goal is reached, which is what? The one world government. They want that anyway. It's already on the, it's coming. They have to make sure that they have less resistance though. And the best way to have less resistance, get rid of resistance by people. Get rid of people.
Right. And you have to look at the advent of AI technology and how we need less people now. We don't need as many people, according to them. In their minds, because of AI, we don't need this many people. We have a bunch of useless people that are taking up space in their views. Not my words. I'm just saying that's what they believe. There's too many people. We have to get rid of them. Right. And so, like I said, with Russia, that's what it is going to be our existential threat. We're going to have to use something to attack them. Is that Michael?
Yeah. And at the end of the day, as Marlon stated, they do want to get rid of military-age fighting men. So this is why we have this new NDAA, and they're trying to get rid of all these men, all these young fighting boys that can be any type of resistance here in America. So if we can get them all sent off through this new bill that they're trying to pass, we can get them all sent to these foreign countries, and all these other countries are sending all their young boys, men who can reproduce, who are needed to reproduce. We can start slowly, dropping the population across the world over time.
It's a way more effective.
Here's a thought that I just came up with that compounds upon what's been said. So, depopulation is the end goal. So then within the ideological spectrum here in the States, as far as our culture is concerned, the homosexual agenda wants to depopulate the earth through lack of childbirth. As well as marriages. The abortion obviously is completely genocidal and wanting to completely just wipe out children, period, and not have any new ones. And then you got the transgender ideology that basically wants to chemically castrate all the kids so they don't repopulate, and therefore depopulation, thereby making not only our military defense systems impotent, due to a current commander-in-chief that is also impotent, but then also it destabilizes everything that we can do in terms of our own abilities. And so you got all of that coupled with the fact that now the world is also involved in these same three ideological moves for their own civilizations, as their own civilians.
This is how they won the wars in many of their places. When they did it with India, they emasculated the men, fighters. The British took over that. They did the same thing to the Caribbean. They did the same thing to Africa. They allowed them to have all the kinds of wars that they wanted. You notice they never stepped in to any of the world wars that were happening when Idi Amin was happening in Africa. They didn't care. In fact, they supplied weaponry to each side to watch them wipe each other out, because the goal was eventually to bring Africa to its knees, all of the countries there, via their own hand. It is the same reason why they won't put any emphasis on stopping anything happening here, because the goal is to get rid of people. This war that they're going to put young men in is not a war that is a winnable war, because they don't have a goal in mind. Can anybody tell me what the goal of the Russian-Ukraine war is?
No, because they haven't ever stated it. You heard her earlier, Kamala Harris, say, we want a just peace. Well, what does that even mean? That just means nothing. That's words on a piece of paper. What do you mean just peace? Do you mean like getting them completely out of Ukraine and Crimea? Because that's not happening. They're never giving that back.
Like what they want is for Russia to kowtow to their demands. And the same way they got mad at African countries that didn't kowtow and exorcise them from the conglomeration of invites, that's what they'll end up doing. If you don't want to be part of our club, we're not going to invite you. However, we're going to try and invade you as the soonest chance we get. This point has been driven home since the Opium Wars. And we covered this in mass when we showed you the types of reasons we went into war. We went into war for absolutely no dang reason, sometimes just because we wanted a piece of what people are fighting over. So right now you're watching the explosion of the military-industrial complex, going after things that does not benefit the people that supposedly the military is supposed to defend and fight for. They have long since stopped fighting for the American people. I would say this might be a knock on military, but I'm not going against military soldiers who are actual.
Don't hurt my feelings.
No. So it's like this. I think
Right.
the Vietnam War was our first real look into the testing ground of actual combatants removal from American soil. That was the first time you saw the U.S. not care about the casualties or their return. And I think that was a timestamp in history where they showed you that we don't really care about our personnel. We don't care about the reasons for the war. We don't even care about the process for the war. Our goal here is to show that we are the ones in charge.
And
Yeah.
we will sacrifice anyone to ensure that you guys know that
anyone and
we're in
everyone.
charge.
Yeah. And this is just another instance of this where you're seeing now that, hey, come on and fight for us. We're not going to tell you why you're fighting. We're not going to give you a reason to fight. We're not even going to ask you if you believe in what you're fighting for. At least back then in World War I and II, they gave you this bad guy. And you could blatantly see, okay, yeah, that's a bad guy. There's no doubt people can look at Hitler and say, okay, yeah, he wasn't good. Good. Okay, we see that. But what exactly has Putin in his time frame done to anyone outside of Russia?
Yeah.
Name me one thing.
Because, like, here's the thing: is they keep pointing to Putin as being the Nazi, but I mean, there's only one person in the world currently creating camps and putting them in them.
Thank you.
And that's in China, and nobody says shit about that. Like, they don't do anything about it.
And you know, when it comes to like Putin, is he part of the World Bank? Does this country fall under the World Bank? So, and that's another reason. You notice, like, all these countries usually that don't want to be part of the World Bank, in some way, shape, or form, we go after them.
They become the bad guy.
They become the bad guy. We either remove the leader. I was gonna say Libya, Gaddafi. We either remove the leader or we create this big villain to where we can go to war with these guys, change out the leadership, as Marlon stated earlier, put a new guy in there that toes the line with these big bankers. And now these big bankers have control.
Gaddafi, because how else were we going to have our slave markets again?
And then, you know, with all if they get their guy in there, you know, now these big bankers have control of the world. They want Russia. They want China. They want to be in control of their economy so bad, and their money and their resources, that they're willing to let people die over that stuff. And then you got dumb Americans back here picking sides and waving flags and doing all this stuff, and they don't even know what they're waving the flags for.
Right.
Until one of their sons or daughters goes over there and loses their life over a conflict. They don't even know why we're over there. And then they're going to be like, whoa, why are we over there? We want peace. No, you was just over here proud.
Yep.
Isn't that what Zelensky kind of wanted, though? He requested that the blood of American sons and daughters be what pays the. I mean, there you go.
Yeah, are going to be the ones in Ukraine die. Yeah, but like I mentioned this backstage, and I'll mention it again, is that these are the same people that lied us into the Iraq War. Like, the same exact people. So they keep saying that Putin is an existential threat to NATO and to the West and Europe at large, but then they have yet to prove any definitive evidence that's exactly what he wants. You know, for a guy who's surely a dictator, he would say what he wanted to do, right? Like, out loud, because he's crazy. Because as they usually do, they just say, hey, we're here for this. I mean, even using their own logic, even Hitler said that he wanted to expand Germany to the lands that were taken away, right? Like, it's in their minds, it's the same thing, right? So that's what Putin's doing. He's wanting to return the lands of Soviet Russia, right? That's what he's wanting to do. But he hasn't actually said that. He said, no, we just want them to do this. But he's also said he wants to denazify Ukraine, which they tend to forget in their little press briefings. There as well. So,
yeah,
you know, take it with a grain of salt. I don't believe Putin any more than I believe the freaking people that lied to get us into Iraq. But like I said before, as the joke is like, it's like going to a bar with a friend who instigates a fight. You fight with a dude, you kill the dude, you go away for 20 years, come back out, and he's like, hey, you want to go to a bar with me? It's like, of course not. I don't want to go to a bar with you. You're going to get me in trouble again.
It's a bar mitzvah.
It's happening now.
Stevie Wonder wrote a song called Frontline. I don't know if y'all ever heard the song Frontline. It was about a young black man that went to the Vietnam War and came back and encountered all kinds of crazy stuff going on. And if you remember, that was when this whole idea of the thought process that they would dump crack into the inner cities. One of the lines was in verse 2. They said, they gave me a uniform and a tiny salty pill to stop the big urge I might have for the wrong kind of thrill. They put a gun in my hand and said, shoot until he's dead, but it's hard to kill when please, I'm your friend echoes through your head. Now, this is what they're planning. That this is two-part that they're doing to the depopulation. Remember, they're not training young men to be actual military people. They're recruiting them for bodies. That's all you're doing. You're not trying to train them the right way. I can probably guarantee money that the training that they have today is probably not the kind of stuff that bro went through. I'm gonna go on a limb and say it's probably mediocre compared to what he went through. The next line is, my niece is a hooker and my nephew's a junkie too, but they say I have no right to tell them how they should do. They laugh and say, quit bragging about a war you should have never been in. But my mind is so brainwashed, I'll probably go back and do it again. Their whole goal is to create the fanfare of universal peace to the idiots today. So join the military. We are looking for the utopia, and the only way to do it is for you to sign up. They kind of had the same mindset back in World War I and II, where they can sell you on this great goal of universal treaty and peacekeeping and all that nonsense. But today it'll be exponentially worse. Here's why. You don't have the same level of patriotism in this country as you did back in the early 1900s. You simply don't. There's no way you can tell me that American young men and women have the same level of patriotism, even as far back as 1970, 75, 80. So when you send these men out, you're sending them out with the incentive of coming back or the incentive of something that's unattainable, world peace. Then when they come back, they are coming back to a degraded country already, and they get to see less and less of the people they dislike, which is what their goal is, depopulation. And you've already sold them on the illusion that this is going to happen. Then you can send them back out, just like the song says. I'll probably go do it again. And they send you back out, and this time you may not come back. But in your mind, yeah, I've done a good deed. Meanwhile, your family are the ones suffering. You went to war, and they're still suffering regardless, because the goal of your war is not for your family. The goal of the war was for the complex. But they've sold it really good. They know exactly how to package this for people to buy in. You're not going to attain world peace. There's not going to be any treaties brokered enough to make things happy in the world. And this is not about the people in the world anyway. It's about an elite few.
And here's the thing that people aren't putting into the calculation is if World War III breaks out, it fractures the United States.
Yeah.
And I don't mean like in a small way. I mean in a big way. It fractures.
Fully. Like a femur.
Fully
a femur
breaks.
fracture.
Yeah. So because like here's the thing. You got to understand like the amount of divestment that people have with each other in the United States, and also the fracturing of political lines in the United States. Do you think that they're not going to take advantage of that in World War III? Do you think that Russia or China or any of the other people that are going to be on their side won't instigate things in the United States to fracture it further?
Yeah, especially when everyone is so emotionally charged and not logically sound.
It won't take
much.
much.
Right. I mean, China could be like, I don't know. They could I don't know what they could do, but like propaganda wise.
We'll bring your communist utopia. Listen to us. We'll help you.
Yeah.
Because, communism will be what fights racism or something like that.
So when it comes to this world war, who does Saudi Arabia back?
Are they part of BRICS?
Who? What?
Yeah,
Saudi Arabia.
Yeah. Saudi Arabia, right?
Saudi Arabia.
Do they back Russia?
They held out their vote on this. I don't think they have a dog in that fight.
Yeah, they hold out whoever will give them more money. Saudi Arabia is on nobody's side other than Saudi Arabia.
They didn't cross DT. They didn't cross him. They didn't cross Trump though, and the reason they didn't cross Trump is because he's just as volatile as anybody else out, including Mr. North Rocket Man. So you cross it. Here's the thing: he has no problem doing that, especially when you're going against the interests of the American people. This is why they don't like him. This is why they're not going to let him back in, because if he does get back in, he's going to flip the industrial complex on his head by removing all of their resources and internalizing America's struggle. And that's what we need, but they won't let that happen because their goal is not the redemption of America, it's the erasure of America as we know it. So they're not going to give him that chance.
The Saudis are rats. They will go wherever the safest place is.
No water.
Yeah.
And
They don't
someone
wanna go
said
do
in
the
the
shit.
chat that Saudi is. Someone did say in the chat that Saudi did go to BRICS. So where I was getting at with that is, okay, someone brought up how it's going to really affect America. It's going to break us like a finger. It's going to break America. A lot of our oil import comes from who?
Saudi Arabia.
Right?
Yeah.
So if America and NATO go to war with Russia and Saudi's with Russia, what do you think Saudi Arabia is going to do? They're going to say, we're not sending you anything.
Yeah, or they will sell it to
That's
both,
what I
which
think.
is more than likely.
I think they would cut it. I think they would cut it off to hurt America even more, and it's going to affect a lot in America, even though the war is not here. And a lot of people aren't understanding that. They think they just see it on TV. They seeing bombs dropped over there. No, it's going to hit the homeland, some way, shape, or form. It's going to hit us hard too.
Here's another thing I just thought of that I didn't really think about it for. There is a giant military force that currently exists in the Western Hemisphere south of the U.S. Do you know what that is?
Venezuela.
No. It's the Mexican drug cartels are the largest military in the hemisphere besides the United States. And guess where they get the majority of their drug products from?
China.
China.
So how easy it would be for these, like New Jalisco, who is former Mexican military members, how easy it would be for them to cause chaos on the border?
It's a cakewalk. That's a cakewalk.
So I'm just saying there's wide-reaching complications for them to push World War III that they're not prepared for.
No, I think they are. They don't care. I think they genuinely don't care about. They're creating. Okay, I equate this to playground time in elementary school. You don't have a favorite kid because you're just a field manager for, you're out there and you're making sure nobody gets hurt. But you have a sadistic mind and you want to see the kids, gladiator it out for a toy. And so you put something in the middle of the field that they all want and watch everybody get destroyed. Everybody just beating each other up to get this thing. And at the end of it, you just go and pick up your toy after everyone's hurt and you walk off. Recess is over. Yeah. That's how I see them seeing this war. They don't have a dog in the fight necessarily, but they're setting the pieces for everybody to go after. And the fallout, they'll benefit from because they can go in and scavenge. That's all. They just want to clean up the mess.
Mexico and South America are going to be the biggest problems in the event of World War III because a lot of infrastructure, they're also partnered with Russia and China. A lot of infrastructure in the South, especially in Panama, is now currently controlled by China.
Didn't we construct the Panama Canal?
We did, and then we gave it up and gave it back to the Panamanians, and then they got it sold to the Chinese, who currently control the Panama Canal.
Lovely.
Yeah.
The thing is, we talk the military talk about China like it's the bad guy when we're actually working with them.
Yep.
There's nothing in the military that's working against China. I understand this. If you are going to destabilize an entire region, knowing that if China were to roll in there, they could take over, you're working with them.
And we're not far behind in that.
Right.
No,
that's exactly what happened in Afghanistan. We left, and guess who spoke in? China did.
Yeah. It's a different kind of vacuum now. That's all. A different vacuum. But we'll be back on Wednesday. Has anybody heard about the sentencing for Hunter yet?
No, not yet.
No? He was guilty. I know that.
Yeah,
the sentencing.
I heard. Go ahead.
No. What did you say? You haven't heard anything?
I heard. I mean, people have been inspired about the whole idea that his dad pardoned him, but I haven't seen any evidence.
No, I don't think he's done that.
Yeah, they're saying that he's not going to do it. More than likely, the judge is going to be lenient on him. They'll probably give him probation and maybe a couple of years, if that.
Yeah. When he should be thrown under the jail, but hey,
right.
We know how that goes. So we might end up having that discussion.
Here's what they do. I think they're going to wait to sentence Trump in July, right? Then they're going to base Hunter's sentencing off of what they do Trump, because let's say they sentence Hunter, they give him a harsh sentence, they hit him hard, boom. Now they're like, see how we did Hunter. So you shouldn't complain if we do it to Trump. So we can hit him hard too. So they got to wait till they sentence Trump to see what kind of sentence he's get, and they're going to try to make it equal to what they get if they sentence Hunter. equal to what they gave Trump.
Hunter gets pardoned if Donald Trump wins anyway, because he'll do it on the last day right before he steps out of the office.
Yeah, so you can't face no backlash for it.
Yeah, exactly.
So we might talk about come Wednesday is that debacle kind of a situation. What's that going to end up like? And see how that turns out. The bigger thing to me is not whether or not he'll be pardoned, but what kind of precedent it's going to cause in the long run for people who do have drug backgrounds and still have firearms, because they're all about gun control, but apparently not when it comes to people like Hunter.
Right.
So they have a dilemma on their hands, but I don't think they'll worry about it because they have a way to spin it already set up. We just don't know where it is yet. So,
well, the shiny object, Marlon. What's the shiny object right now? War.
Yeah. War.
The shiny object will happen, and then this Hunter thing
go away.
It'd be
UFOs.
Yeah. Over there. Who? Hunter? Who?
What's Hunter?
So,
yeah, it's insane. But we'll be back Wednesday. Make sure you guys tune in. Too Strong will be live tomorrow, not tonight. We're going to be doing some other things tonight, but we'll be live tomorrow. We're going to be discussing Mr. Robert Morris and that debacle with his pedophilia while being a preacher. So we'll talk about that tomorrow. We need to discuss whether we want to replace the Hooch Time with our time.
Yep.
And go live every day.
5 days a week.
Yeah. We at that level, man. We at that level.
Yeah.
We were already doing that before.
Hey, we just gotta, them topics. We just gotta be hitting them.
That's all. We gotta be on. So keep sending them, folks. We got a few, but some of them. Here's the thing: a lot of you send us stuff that have to do with things that YouTube frowns on. They're more set for Rumble. So just understand that if we don't cover your topic, to cover those topics, we have to skin them back so far that they almost don't look like the topic you'd want to talk about. We don't want to do them injustice by doing that. So we're picking carefully, but we also have to work within the confines of what will make the channel successful. So it's not that we don't want to talk about it. We just can't but remember, we still have a backup channel in the Rumble field where we can do stuff. And for all we know, we might do it Tuesday and Thursday on the Rumble. So we have more Rumble time. That might not be a bad idea. Just go instead of, and get rid of Saturdays and just do Tuesday, Thursday Rumble and Monday, Wednesday, Friday. That way we can cover a whole lot. We have more topics because we can talk about everything on Rumble.
Right.
And make it a single topic show. So give your thoughts in the chat afterwards and let us know. I might set up a survey and you guys can tell us if you want something that you want.
That sounds good.
Right.
But in the meantime and in between time, Mr. Lee.
Like, share, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you guys Wednesday. Peace out.
Peace.